Hi, I'm Dr. Nathan Wolek. I am Professor of Digital Arts at Stetson University and the 2020 Artist in Residence at the Canaveral National Seashore's ACA Soundscape Field Station. I just really want to thank everybody for this opportunity. I thank the Atlantic Center for the Arts, thank the Canaveral National Seashore, the Friends of Canaveral, and all the partners that are involved in the Soundscape Field Station for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody and seeing what comes out of this time period of really intensely listening to and recording and focusing on the soundscape at the Canaveral National Seashore. At this point, I've already been making some trips out there, doing some recording, and I'm looking forward to continuing that process in the months and weeks ahead of us here in the rest of 2020. My main focus for the ACA Soundscape Field Station is to really look at where people are interacting with the natural soundscape. I'm particularly interested in these kind of intersections where people are in the natural soundscape and human sounds are overlapping with natural sounds or overlapping with animal sounds, overlapping with geophonic sounds. And so those intersections tend to be the things I'm most interested in as an artist. And so finding locations where I can hone in on those intersections and doing more long-term longitudinal recordings. So going back to the same locations again and again and again, and then taking that material and making art with it. In June 2018, I started really going regularly to DeLeon Springs State Park here in Florida. It's an interesting location because you've got the natural springs bubbling up from the earth. You've got the wildlife, of course, both above the water with bird life and other creatures living in the forest nearby, but then also under the water you've got fish, you've got manatees, you've got other creatures living in the water, and so it's a really interesting habitat that people then inject themselves in because you've got this the springs there has been walled off and created this swimming area. You've also got the Pancake Restaurant and its own sonic signature that it brings to the park. And so it really is an interesting location where you have these intersections between sounds from humans, sounds from animals, sounds from the earth. And just started this practice of going back again and again and recording on different days of the week, different weather conditions. Always in the morning, though, was my focus, and always recording at these same 5 spots around the boil. And what that allowed me to do is really create a kind of comparative study about how the soundscape changes over the course of the year. Wrapping up that project as the COVID-19 lockdown occurred, and so since the rangers knew about my project, they were able to get me back into the park before it opened up to the general public, and I was able to record some interesting recordings at noon when it should be the peak of human activity. Recording it at noon when there was no one around. Some really interesting recordings for comparative study and in terms of listening to the differences between what it sounds like at rest with no humans there, and then what it sounds like at its peak activity level with sometimes over 200, 300 people in the park. Obviously, the effects of the pandemic itself are horrible, and we want to. I really want to add that caveat of, like, we're losing human life and people are experiencing sickness and illness, and that's a horrible thing. But as a sound person, I really was taken by the amount of silence that came with reduced activity. And it's something I've really been reflecting on throughout my work as a sound artist, is that if we just simply slow down a little bit, it brings a qualitative jump in the reduction of noise in our overall soundscape, our daily lives. And so I think what the pandemic, the stay-at-home orders, the lockdowns, people have different terms for these things. I think what that really showed is that it is possible for us to slow down and bring that qualitative improvement in the overall natural soundscape through a reduction in car traffic, through a reduction in airline traffic. I think one thing that living here in West Volusia County, one of the things that I am always struck by is just we're underneath the path of exit for airline traffic coming out of Orlando. And they're pretty high above us, but the fact that that route runs right over this part of the county is a pretty consistent element of the sonic signature of the soundscape here in this region. And so to have a few weeks where that just stopped, we haven't really had that happen. Last time it happened in my lifetime was after 9/11, and that was a much shorter time period. I'm thinking after 9/11, I was actually living in the Evanston area of Illinois, right under the path of entry into O'Hare Airport, and so it was very stark, sudden stop of airline traffic then. And just as I say that, we've got an airline flying right over my head. I'm looking almost straight up at that airline, that jet leaving Orlando. This was a more gradual tale as the airline traffic kind of teetered off, but it did create this same moment where without that airline traffic, the soundscape was able to rest a little bit, right? That periodic interruption of the jets leaving the major airport. Coupled with, I live less than a quarter mile from a major, it's literally called the bypass, right, where trucks are sent around to land. Having a reduction in traffic on that road was a major change in the soundscape where I'm living currently. So yeah, I think it gives us just a chance to pause and ponder what the soundscape could be like. Not without humans, but with a drastic reduction in just the speed and the pace of that we're constantly going. That leads to an increase in the overall noise level. If we want to talk about anthrophony, right, the sound that humans are creating, and that I would argue is a qualitative improvement in the soundscape, and one that I'm hoping that people don't soon forget on the backside of this pandemic. I think we all, it's no longer a hypothetical, it's actually something concrete that we all heard and experienced. And I hope that leads to conversations about how we might improve the soundscape going forward. I think having a more balanced soundscape, I think it just makes it more restful for us as humans, I think we sometimes, because we can become habituated to noise in our everyday life, we start to think of that as the norm, right? But norms can and should be questioned when it comes to the choices we make and how they're impacting our daily lives. So, is a jet going overhead every 5 minutes or 2 minutes during peak hours, is that the norm we want? Is a busy road full of combustion engines the norm that we want, basically? And hopefully the fact that we've heard the quality of what it could be means that we can start to question some of those norms, and how do we get to a better norm for us on the backside of this pandemic? For me, the soundscape, it's probably equal parts analytical and emotional. There's something about putting those headphones on and listening through microphones that it just gives you this heightened sense of reality that I can't get with just listening with my ears, and so I do like to, when I'm recording, listen back on headphones, not just for monitoring's sake, but just because of that heightened sense of reality that I get listening through the microphones with that extra few dB of gain that you get from the microphone. It feels like there's more detail there when I do that, and so I often will be sitting, recording observations in my journal while I'm listening, writing down time so I can go back and find things. But I do, so I guess the writing things down in my journal is more analytical, but I think the heightened sense of reality is emotional. So I think it's a balance of the two. So I teach at Stetson University. I'm part of the digital arts program there, where my specialties are in audio, primarily teaching electronic music. And as part of electronic music, I really got into getting out into the world and trying to do field recording to find interesting samples for my electronic music. That's really was my entry point into field recording. But about 5 years ago, that started to become more the center of focus, not on the periphery of my own artistic practice. And the more I kind of thought about and reflected on sound in the natural world and getting out and finding sounds out in the open is where I started getting into a field called sound studies. Sound studies is really an area within academia where we use sound as a point of intersection between multiple disciplines. And so I used that as a formula for joining the first year seminar program at Stetson University, which is teaching first semester students right at their beginning, the week that they get on campus. We start working with them and teaching them about a topic that we're passionate about. And I can't think of anything that I'm more passionate about than talking about sound. I mean, I could go on all day talking about sound. But the fact that sound studies is about the intersection of disciplines, it makes it a really good point of focus for first semester students because of the fact that they're new to college, right? We know from research that college students change their major, right? And so I can't think of any better way to introduce them to the liberal arts, to introduce them to the different disciplines that are available to them on the college campus than using sound as a point of intersection. So, I mean, I can talk about sound from the perspective of artists and talk about Dada movements and the people that were rethinking how sound was used as artists and introducing the elements of noise into music. But I can also talk to them about entrepreneurial endeavors, people like Bob Moog and how he really was both a synthesizer genius, but also an entrepreneur who built his business a few times and getting started and building a business based on sound. We can talk about theremin, and we have a thriving Russian and East European studies program on our campus. So theremin is a good entry point into that because you've got this crazy Russian inventor who invents the first mass-produced electronic music instrument, but also leads this double life spying on the United States and taking information back to the Soviet Union. We can talk about aquatic and marine biology, right? And the role that anthropogenic noise has under the water, both on our rivers and in the ocean, where they're doing surveys for gas deposits and other minerals on the ocean floor. So sound really is a nice topic to act as kind of glue to all of these liberal arts disciplines. And I mean, I don't want to leave out business and music and the other aspects of our campus where students are interested in studying. And because sound studies is about that interdisciplinary conversation, it becomes a good framework for introducing students to the choices they have ahead of them in college in their first semester.